Hi, welcome. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on which we have this land on, and I'd like to introduce our new inductees to the team. Today we're going to be talking about cultural awareness. What is cultural awareness? Being aware of common difference between cultures increases trust, improves work relationships, and streamline projects. It also improves communication, which is the backbone to a successful team. So we're talking about the common differences between cultures, and once you understand the common difference between cultures, it increases trust with the client or clients or groups or minority of people that you're working with. It improves work relationships within the workplace and outside the workplace, as this is it improves communication and is the backbone to a successful team. The benefits of workplace cultural awareness extends beyond getting along. Um, getting along. The benefits of being culturally aware are innumerable, which is the global anomaly. Intercultural teams are becoming the norm. So, what we're talking about is being aware of the culture and it becoming a norm in the workplace, working with clients and stuff like that. And like globally, it's going to be it's going to be normal practice that every organization or business or committee or anything will have to have, and just being aware of the different cultures that we have in these groups and who we work with. Being aware of common differences between cultures, again, it increases trust, improves work relations, and streamlines your projects. So just having streamlined projects, working with people on projects, being culturally sensitive towards their needs, not just their needs, but they're respecting their culture. They might have stories and songlines, and especially Indigenous people, they have stories and songlines. They have a strong connection to the land. It goes to say that a lot of other cultures have a strong connection to the land or spirituality. Religion is a key factor in a lot of culture as well. Culture safety is about sharing respect, sharing meaning, and sharing knowledge. The experience of learning together with dignity and truly listening. Strategically and institutional reform to remove barriers to the optimal health, well-being, and safety of Aboriginal people. Individual organisations and systems ensure that cultural values do not negatively impact on Aboriginal peoples. Individual organisations and systems ensure self-determination for Aboriginal people. This includes sharing power. Um, so that's just a little bit about the culture safety is about. Then cultural content encompass being aware of one's own world's view. So having your own view in the world and stuff like that might not be the same as what the next person beside you would be. Developing positive attitude towards cultural differences. So like I said, listening. That's just culture safety is listening and trying to understand, do your research and learning about their culture. That goes on to the next thing. What I have to talk about is gaining knowledge on different cultures, practices, and worldviews. So you have your own views, and then you have someone else's views. So just understanding, or just not being too things. So just having a positive attitude towards cultural differences, developing skills for communication, and interacting across different cultures. Um, I'd like to say a lot of people that identify as Aboriginal will tell you, or they're Torres Strait Islander or South Sea Islander, they'll tell you, and even if they're not Indigenous, they'll still tell you what their heritage or their lineages or stuff like that. Identify an Aboriginal culture. So the main things we'd have to do to identify Aboriginal culture is ask them their background, who they are, what their mob is, where they're from. If they know that, a lot of the Indigenous people, the older kind of generation, they have been part of the stolen generation, which is really traumatic for them. So they have been stolen away from their lands and their communities and stuff like that, and put into institutions. And identifying Torres Strait Islander cultures. Torres Strait Islander people have a little bit different customs towards the Indigenous Aboriginal people in Australia. The Torres Strait Islander customs start from the food they eat to how religious they are. Torres Strait Islander people are very religious. Aboriginal people are religious, but Torres Strait Islanders seem to be very religious because they were one of the first group of Indigenous people of Australia to be identify as Christianity as their religion back in the 1990s and stuff at the start of the 1990s. So they actually took on the religion they were brought the religion Christianity and stuff, and they took that on, and they really are religious people, and they'll go to church, and they'll be very humble with what they do. The Torres Strait Islander people, and just identifying that there's a difference between these cultures, the Aboriginal culture and the Torres Strait Islander culture, even the South Sea Islander culture and stuff like that, and just identifying what these things are. Could be start from food, could to religion, to customs, to like connection stories, songlines, connection to land and stuff like that. They'll have all different stories about different things. I think the Torres Strait Islander people live on the tip of Australia, which is called the Torres Straits, and they seem to be a lot more homely or accustomed to saltwater totems and saltwater stories and stuff like that. And the Aboriginal people are very identified. They can be saltwater and mainland and stuff, and they have a lot of different customs and stories and songlines to identify which kind of group or clan they come from. So just yeah, that's something we can look at. It's you just have to ask really and just see what they tell you. They'll tell you for themselves. If not, you can sit down and do a bit of research with them. And if they don't know about that, if they're stolen generation and they're willing to look into like where they came from or do some ancestry checks and stuff like that, it'd be good to actually sit down and do a bit of that. That will build a bit of trust and give them a bit of knowledge and kind of put them at peace with like what they're what they identify as, which is good. So while we are doing on the topic of that, I'd like to also bring in the main concept of communication. Communication is a very important way of reaching and getting trust and building relationships with these people that identify as Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander, or South Sea Islander, any culture really. So you'd like to use interpreters. Interpreters will be very important for working with people from diverse backgrounds and cultures and stuff like that. So you need to gain significant knowledge and awareness of values, attitudes, and assumptions that inform both cultures they work in order to successfully navigate the culture divide. Exposure to the language in a variety of situations is a good place to start. So just having an interpreter, if you was working with a indigenous person or non-indigenous or could be any culture, you could just ask them like, how do you say good day? Hello. How do you say hello or how's your day or something? And they might be able to tell you in their own language how to say that, and you would kind of learn a little bit about how to talk and understand a little bit of their languages. But interpreters are very important with that because they'll be able to have fluent conversations with these people, and they'll be able to interpret it, and that's what we have interpreters for, to actually give us knowledge and information on different things that are going on in their personal life or in the community and stuff like that. So an interpreter is a very valuable asset to working with people from different diverse backgrounds and cultures and stuff. Important of inclusive practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, activities being engaged in developing and elevating service provisions. So making sure that Indigenous people, if you are working with Indigenous people or Torres Strait Islander people, that they are actively engaged in developing and elevating services provision. At the department, all employees have a responsibility to ensure that discrimination is not tolerated or condoned, as outlined in the Equal Opportunity and Anti-Discrimination Policy, as well as ensure that discrimination does not occur. Yeah, so we all know about the anti-discrimination policy. I believe everyone should know about that. It's a policy. It's also a human rights under the acts and stuff. So be very important to know about that and make sure that you always follow that. Again, Aboriginal people at the department, there are numerous ways to show your support and foster inclusion. So that's just making sure that they're included in a lot of the different things that you'll be doing, working with clients, maybe talking to the elders and stuff like that. All right, so we covered that. Yeah. All right, so now we're going to talk about the impact of European settlement on Indigenous people. So, introduction European settlement has been a severe and devastating impact on the indigenous people. The depossession of their land, exposure to new disease, and involvement in violent conflicts resulted in the death of vast numbers of Aboriginal people. The small percentage of Aboriginal people who did not drive during these early decades of the colony were not unaffected. The impact of the white settlers changed their lives and the lives of future generations forever. So that's trauma and stuff like that, what we talk about. Loss of land and culture. So, like I said, there's stolen generations and there's loss of land and there's a loss of culture and stuff in certain areas. If you go to certain places, they'll have more culture, understanding. I think because they practice it a lot more, they're a lot more closer in that. And we're just trying to really bring that back as an Indigenous people. We're trying to bring that culture back to the mainstream of Indigenous people and Torres Strait Islander people. But loss of land and culture by losing their territories, their traditional owners of the land, and their loss of their connection to country, they were greatly impacted with their well-being, physical, mental, and spiritual. When Aboriginal tribes were broken during the European settlement, people lost their power, their purpose, and their identity. Kinship and complex codes of conduct also underpin Aboriginal culture. Law refers to the customs and story which help govern all respect of Aboriginal life and were passed down from one generation to another. Every step that you take in this nation is a step on land country that Aboriginal people own, what kingship of the Aboriginal culture. Um, Law is a very important thing, LORE. It's done in men's business and women's business. Women's business have certain rules, men's business has certain rules. So law is a very important thing. Just like I said, law is the connection to country and spirituality and physically and mentally and stuff. And it kind of is the part of what their spiritual um, law is, like the law, LAW law, but it's LORE in Aboriginal terms, and it's just the way that they have their own regulational settings and stuff for connecting and stuff and spirituality and that for different things. What would be an example? Law would be like a woman can't play didgeridoo, they'll get pregnant or something like that. That could be an example, and that's a law along a lot of Aboriginal communities that women don't play didgeridoos. Men hunt gather. When children, they live with their mum or their woman. They live with the woman and the grandmothers and stuff. And when they become men, they live with the men, or will they go to the men? Yeah, so yeah, that's very important law. So you have to know about that too. So and you don't bring it up too much in conversation, but they will tell you if that is a part of their law and stuff like that, or what law means to them. That could be different. Yeah. So you want to build trust and rapport to help and for people feel safe and comfortable with you and their surroundings. Ensure confidentiality and consider men's and women's business. Listening, explaining may take time because of narrative communication styles or due to logistic differences. Yeah, so that was my video simulated thing, inducting the two new people to the team, the two new inductees to the team. That was just yeah, that was my assessment. Thank you very much.